So I think like the waving game, nonverbal, the copy back, hi bye, trick or treat, a sign for our nonverbals where they're, that sort of thing. So let's talk about like a little bit of the trick or treat process itself and going out and about. They don't do it they don't go out and about in the night in the dark as much. They'll do like trunk or treat at school with the, but what are some suggestions you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned before common questions, creating like action plans. This could be a perfect opportunity to create an action plan prior to trick or treat experience or trunk or treat, or if there's a Halloween party the day of Halloween. I think it's on a Friday this year. So there's many opportunities for you to think about, who will be there, right? So if you're thinking about trick or treating, well, there will be other families on the street. There will be other kids. There will be people that are at the doors, right? And so what are opportunities for what they might ask? So, some questions they might ask are, what are you for Halloween this year? Or, what's your favorite candy? Do you want chocolate or do you want something sweet? Is this your first Halloween? Like there's so many questions that someone could ask you on the actual experience. And let's say even more questions if you're thinking about trick or treating with a buddy or various people with you, so they might ask you other types of questions, like even like, oh, how's school going so far? Or, tell me like one of your favorite parts of school this year so far. Like it might not even just be based on Halloween, but just because you're in that experience, there could be other questions people could ask you. And so for a young kid, you can form those fun little cards where maybe they draw a picture of their answer. So let's say they're dressed as a witch. Maybe they draw a picture also of a witch and they can show it. Or they can draw a picture of maybe like, let's say their favorite candy is like a Reese's cup. They can draw a picture of it and show it. Or again, if they're verbal, of course, that's where they can share it or they can always tell a parent. But for some of our older kids, it's where they can really script it out and write it down. And again, like you could even practice some of these exposures before trick or treating. So, for example, we do this a lot in our office where the week or two before Halloween, we'll have these exposures where different, office staff will be in their rooms with their Halloween bucket and we'll practice knocking on the door and having the child say, they might script it out, trick or treat, and they'll have the sign. And again, they'll go with their parent. Whether, again, if they're verbal, they can say trick or treat. If their parent helps them come into communication, they can say trick or treat to their parent, or the parent can say trick or, and they can end with treat. They can also show trick or treat if they're not as comfortable verbalizing at that time. And so
Yeah,
there's many different ways that we can practice that trick or treat experience.
even taping trick or treat. I've had kids take little like voice memos on their phone and play trick or treat, or they do it with a friend or a sibling, trick or treat. So there's lots of ways we can do that for sure. And I think the key is respecting the social communication bridge. And really, I loved what you said about what questions, they're walking around. Sometimes you don't know what their costume is. And so someone might say, oh, who are you this year? So preparing those answers in advance to minimize the need to think and process in the moment, and really implementing that SM triangle where rather than the parent answer or turn to their child and go, you can say it, you can do it. Maybe they can, maybe they can't, depending
Right.
on what your treatment provider can guide, how they guide you, because your treatment provider should be giving you this information to be able to
Exactly.
help you navigate these situations. As parents that aren't in like experts in the field, they may not know. And so it's not just be brave to say it if they're not yet ready. I'm all about being verbal, initiative, elaborative, and expressive. I want our listeners to understand that. But some kids aren't there yet. So we need to help them get there. And so utilizing the bridge and where they're at as a starting point to bridge up, and then needing to possibly bridge down. Like the child may be verbal with two or three people, but all of a sudden there's 6 or 7 or 8 around, maybe sitting near, a peer they're comfortable with, or a parent is there, they may need to utilize a verbal intermediary. It's just, there's just all sorts of ways to kind of utilize the, social communication bridge.